Welcome to Running for Real, a global community with a shared love and curiosity for running. Together we reconnect with the reasons why we love to run and discover ways it helps us become better people. Whether it's the quiet moments of a morning run while the rest of the world still sleeps, or befriending the strangers next to you at the start line of a race. We are here to connect with others who see running as the common thread that weaves our lives together. Come join me, Tina Muir, as I talk with people from all walks of life, united by a love of running. Hello, my friends. Welcome to episode 335 of the Running for Real podcast. Thank you for joining me today. I'm excited that you are here, and I am excited for you to get to know my guest today. But before I go and introduce my guests, I want to let you know about two things. One is that our RIDC recovery resource, which you would have heard about in last week's episode, is coming live very soon. It's going to be 50 plus videos, and that is going to be available for free on YouTube to learn about relative energy deficiency in sport. And yes, just because if you don't feel like you are thin enough or fast enough or run enough miles, but you feel like something is off with your body, this is probably going to give you the answer there. And so I encourage you to go over to our YouTube account and subscribe so that you can see notifications for those videos as soon as they drop. They are with some of the best experts in the world, and they are going to be all about learning to understand your body regardless of the situation that you are in right now. And as I have mentioned many times before, disordered eating and RIDC does not discriminate by body shape, body size, body weight. It can be any of us, and I think many of us don't recognize what is going on. So go check that out. Secondly, and most importantly, I want to let you know that this episode we are about to introduce, I want you to just think for a moment about what month we are going into. It is coming up to the end of January here. We are going into February, which, yes, is Black History Month. It is also the month that Ahmaud Arbery was murdered. And I just want you to really take your time with this episode today to think about what we've talked about today and just be mindful of the changes that can be made. And this does not mean just checking boxes, as a lot of companies and brands and organizations will do as we go into Black History Month, but the work that needs to be done. Now, a lot of that work in the running space is being done through Running Industry Diversity Coalition, RIDC, which you'll hear a lot about today. Now, RIDC works with in education, in community work, and racial diversity research, which you're going to hear my guest talk about in just a few minutes. But I wanted to just put that in your minds as you listen to this episode. Pause, take notes, come back to it and think if you need to take space to think and really reflect on your own life. But this is a really important time to do so. So today I am excited to welcome Kiera Smalls to the podcast. I've wanted to interview Kiera for many years now. She co-founded City Fit Girls, which is now known as Strides, which is in Philadelphia. If you live there, you definitely want to be listening to this. She is the National Executive Director of Running Industry Diversity Coalition, which is RIDC, which I just mentioned. And she's a mindfulness teacher and just a big ball of light and energy, which I love so much. She is one of those people that just shines bright in whatever room she is in. And I'm excited for you to get to meet her. So let's go hear from one of our sponsors and get to talk to Kiera. I am excited to introduce you to and to welcome Orlo to our list of partners here at Running for Real. I am very excited to connect you to Orlo and tell you a little bit about them today. So give your health and your immune system a boost with omega-3s and ultra spirulina from the world's most sustainable grower. Orlo grows algae in pure sustainable abundance with zero pesticides or environmental pollutants in the first of its kind aquaculture plant house in Iceland. Their products are better absorbed for better results. This means you get all the benefits of omega-3s from heart health to brain health, immune system function, without those fishy burps or the nasty aftertaste of fish oils. Their polar omega-3 structure boasts 3 times the absorption over fish or other algae oils. Orlo is the future of nutrition. Omega-3s pure plant protein and micronutrients that provide all the benefits without damaging the Earth's ecosystems, so people and planet can thrive. Now, for obvious reasons, you can see why Orlo is a perfect match for us here at Running for Real, but also for you as you continue to make choices that consider the environment, consider your community, consider the long-term effects, and your long-term health. And that is one of the reasons I have really been enjoying Orlo. Now, first, I want to let you know that right now, Orlo has a New Year bundle going on right now. That's a 2-month supply of the omega-3 of your choice plus the immunity boost for $90 and free shipping. But if you use code TINA10, you get an extra 10% off at checkout. That gives you an all-in discount of up to 37%. But I want to tell you a little bit about that immunity boost I just mentioned right there. So they have this immunity boost oral spray, which has the ultra spirulina, and combines it with naturally occurring B12 in its most bioavailable form. It's got a full spectrum of B vitamins and a full dose of vitamin D3. So it's got this powerful formula that's going to support your immune system function and give you natural energy. Now, over the Christmas holiday period, I had a really nasty cold hit me hard from the girls. It hit myself and my dad. And I really found I was not improving. It wasn't really getting much better day after day. Took this immunity boost. I really enjoyed using it every day during that recovery period, and it was great to see that my health started coming back and I started to feel more like myself. So for you as a friend of mine, you can go to orlonutrition.com/discount/Tina10. But the easiest thing you can probably do is go to orlonutrition.com and use code TINA10 for that 10% extra at checkout on top of that special offer they have right now. So I'm going to spell that out for you. That's ORLO, orlonutrition.com, and use code TINA10 at checkout. Enjoy. Kiera, it's been probably 5 years in the making that I've wanted to have you on, maybe like 2 since we've been trying to figure this out, maybe a little bit less. But welcome to the Running for Real podcast. I am excited you were here.
Thank you. I am so excited to be here to talk with you. Thank you for having me.
And we got to meet in person a few months ago now. Yeah, which is really cool. A very short, quick, I think it was twice we chatted, but it was not for long enough. So hopefully in the future we can make it a longer period of time. So, but I'm excited that we get to chat today and get to know you a little bit more. So I want to begin this podcast with something lighthearted before we go into more of a defining moment in your life. And one thing that I came across with you when I was researching was that you mentioned how you like to exchange jokes with your 92-year-old grandmother, which I thought was literally one of the best things I've ever had in my life. Can you share a joke that your grandma has recently shared with you, or one that you shared with her that made her laugh, or a story that made her laugh, or something that you want to share? I'd love to hear something.
Yes. Geneva Josie is a handful. At 92 years old, it's not like one joke that I can pinpoint,
it's not
but
like knock,
it's her character, her demeanor. If we are taking a selfie together, I'm thinking we're big smiles, and then she just makes a silly face. And so she does things like that. Or if we're in conversation and we're talking about something and maybe it's a little deep for me, and I'm thinking she's following along with me, and all along she's just playing me and setting me up for a joke. And then our family around us will all just laugh. But that's how she is. And I would just say she's just so sharp and so aware of her surroundings. And I hope that I can be like that at 92.
Oh, yeah, me too. Yeah, that's exactly the kind of, like you said, what is it? Something, like you said, sharp, but there's a word people put in front of it usually. It's like whip smart or...
Wicked sharp or...
Wicked sharp. Yeah, that might be it. Yeah. Okay. But that's definitely something to aspire to be like, and to make a whole family kind of crack up and plan like that. I love hearing that. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. So it's like when you think you're getting one over her, like if me and a cousin, we're talking about dating or different things like that. And we think like she's not interested in the conversation the whole time. She's listening
Yes.
and she's a little instigating and it just brings us so much joy.
Yeah. I remember my grandma lived to 99, and I remember she would always, sometimes she'd just be like staring off, and then we'd be like, oh, she's not listening to us. And then she'd just respond, and we're like, oh, you were paying attention? She was like, well, of course I was. We were like, well, you just had that like glassy look on your face, so we just figured you were like off thinking about something else. And I always love that when they just kind of are like, yeah, I'm still listening, I'm still here. So thank you for sharing that. And that's just so special that you have that relationship with her. She's just such a bright spot in your life. Do you see a lot of yourself in her? Do you think there's some parts of you and your personality that you think come from her?
Definitely. One, we look just alike. She, my mom, and her, we have the same size nose and a lot of similar features. So it's always nice to see that. And she's endured a lot, and in the midst of all that she's endured, she still has made sure that her family was taken care of, that she was taken care of. And so I do carry a lot of her strength, a lot of her self-preservation, a lot of her care for family, which also translates into care of neighbors, of different people I interact with on a day-to-day. So those are definitely some of the qualities. And again, she hasn't lost her silly sense of self. And for me, that is extremely important. Regardless of what room I'm in or what my title is, I am still quirky. I'm still finding moments of joy or something to laugh at, something to, help us all remind ourselves that we're humans at the end of the day, regardless of our titles and the work we have to do and the uphill battle and the work that we're doing. So those are some things that I carry with me, and I learned a lot of that from her.
Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. It's just such a nice thing when you're able to look back at people and see which parts of you came from where. And I love that I definitely felt that with you when I met you, even that short amount of time we spent together, that I could feel that, like just that energy around you. Like you seem to me, and I even more so now, like that kind of person where everyone's like drawn to in the room because you're just like a ball of energy and light. So I definitely felt that. I want to talk just for a few minutes about some of the roles you play. You're the National Executive Director for Running Industry Diversity Coalition. That is quite a tongue twister to say, isn't it?
Absolutely. Take a breath after that.
I don't think I've ever said it like that before. I've always just said RIDC, so saying it that way is like, So you probably got good practice.
Then you can say RIDC. But I spend my days saying the full name of the organization so that everyone knows. And then it's like, okay, it's RIDC too.
Yes, like get this out the way. So that's a national nonprofit organization that unites the running industry to provide resources, measure progress, and hold the industry accountable to equitable employment, leadership, and ownership positions, and improve inclusion, visibility, and access for Black, Indigenous, and people of color. I know I was reading that. That was very clear. I was reading that. But I do not have it memorized. Maybe at some point in my life I will, although you'll probably change it up. But your role there, can you tell us just a little bit about day to day? You said you spend your days kind of explaining that and saying the full words out. But what does a typical day look like with your role as executive director?
Yeah. So at RIDC, in everything we do, we're helping the industry be committed to racial justice. Mm-hmm. So what does that look like in the brands, the retail shops, at race events, and running crews, et cetera, et cetera. And so I am coming up on 1 year as the first executive director. Prior to me joining, RIDC was ran by a group of volunteers who are different parts of the industry. whether they're retail owners, activists, work for brands. And so they came together around the spring 2020, where there were a series of conversations related to racial justice already happening with some groups. And then Ahmaud Arbery was killed on his run. And then more people said, hey, we need to do something about this. And so you already have individuals who were already curious about what the industry can do. And then you have individuals who this became a new priority for them and they wanted to figure out what they can do. So a handful of folks came together, and that made up of the volunteer board. And then resources came together to be able to turn the Running Industry Diversity Coalition, evolve it from a group of volunteers to a 501c3 organization with its first executive director. And we now have 2 additional staff, a full-time program manager and a part-time operations coordinator. And so my days are spent talking with my team and our workflow, talking with our board of directors and the vision and the strategic plan and where we're going, talking with our partners, and those conversations range between we're just getting started, we're going to be honest, we're just getting started, to we have made systemic change and we will continue to do the work, to tax and legal and operating a nonprofit, national nonprofit with employees across 3 states. So my day is filled with a lot of that. In addition to thinking about how do we continue to amplify and uplift Black, Indigenous, and people of color? How do we continue to help white people learn and unlearn and take initiative to educate themselves, because the resources are out there. RIDC also provides resources. And so all of my days are thinking about what does this industry look like to be committed to racial justice?
It allows companies and organizations and brands to kind of put their money where their mouth is in terms of, saying they want to make change and actually doing the work to make the change, which, I mean, it's been really impressive to watch it grow and watch the conversations that RIDC has been in over the last few years. And I'm sure we're going to get into some of that, because the question I want to ask you next is probably going to be a big part of what led to this moment. So I would love to hear from you. What is an epiphany, a realization, some moment in your life where you were at a fork in the road, and that one decision, maybe that one moment of realization or change kind of led to this moment right here where you can be the national executive director of an amazing nonprofit?
Yeah. I love that question. I'm thinking years ago, a lot of my work centered around grassroots efforts. So I was a community reporter for WHYY, and I got to go around our city and tell
Philadelphia.
In Philadelphia, and tell stories about our unsung heroes in our neighborhoods, about election days, about the politicians that were hoping to get votes, and the neighborhoods that would have homeowners host conversations with their neighbors to see what can we do to hold each other accountable, what can we do to host incoming politicians accountable. So I had a front row seat into the work that was happening on the ground to make communities lively, to make them more accessible, more inviting, and to really make them thrive, and that everybody can enjoy their homes and their neighborhoods and their communities. So doing that work, we're telling stories that were often ignored in mainstream media. I felt like I had some power there, right? Like, okay, the mainstream media won't cover this woman or these groups of men who were taking their own initiative to create safety programs in their neighborhood to combat gun violence, or these neighbors were coming together to raise funds for families in need and during the holidays. So I felt a sense of power by sharing their stories. And then I was part of the launch team for our bike share program, our city's bike share program. And I oversaw the marketing communications and the equity initiatives. And so our work included, how do we make sure that bike share is for everyone? And we had to consider funding for the stations so that they can go into different neighborhoods. What's the communication and messaging? And so having conversations in communities, learning what the concerns are about bike share and the challenges. Some things we heard was, this is not for us. We don't want this. This is a sign of gentrification. Are you bringing jobs to us? And so having those really hard conversations and then thinking, what do we do about this? The people who were making the decisions were, let's say they were our funders, right? They were not necessarily the ones who were in the community. And so that was another aha for me of, okay, I need to get into those rooms. I need to get into the rooms where the quote, like the power was being held. And I need to figure out how to redistribute it. And I need to figure out how to make sure that the voices in the communities were being heard and considered and part of the decision-making process. And so I did work while working on the city's bike share program, and then in other roles to always figure out how to connect available resources to the people and groups who need them most.
Yes.
And so that aha for me was, my personal mission is to connect available resources to the people who need them most. And I think about that in everything I do.
Thank you to Ola Dance for supporting Running for Real. I have been loving telling you about these Ola Dance wearable stereos because I have been wearing them pretty much nonstop. Do you want to know my actual favorite feature is? I'm going to tell you about all the different features today, but my actual favorite feature, which is such a 2023 thing to have, is that the case that you put them in, you put them in there to store them between uses. You snap the case shut and the Bluetooth cuts. And as soon as you open the box again, the Bluetooth connects. It connects immediately to my phone. I love that I have that ability to just turn it on and off, just as simple as opening and shutting the case. And it fits so nicely in there. It's such a nice carrying case. So that's just a little side weird note that I have. And you will know, if you know me well, that I always have these little funny things that I notice about products that I really enjoy. And it's just kind of a simple thing. So today I want to tell you about these truly open ear earbuds. These sit on the outside of your ear so you can hear other noises. You can be on a run, and I've tried these on many, many runs. I can hear squirrels rustling in the leaves. I can obviously hear cars going by. I can hear people talking, but I can always also hear my music or my podcast with crystal clear quality. I was recently listening to Kevin Hart and Jay Shetty on Jay Shetty's podcast, and it was so interesting, and I felt like I was in the room with them. It really was a beautiful experience, and I loved that Ola Dance gave me the opportunity to do that. These earbuds are waterproof, they're sweatproof, they leave you with zero hearing damage because they are on the outside of your ear, and they are very comfortable. There's not that earache inside your ear or on top of your ear. They don't give you that vibration that feels like it's rattling your bones on the inside. It doesn't matter if you are running and you slow to a walk, or it doesn't matter if you are using the vacuum and you turn the vacuum off. I very rarely have to adjust the volume levels. It just is a comfortable fit that is clear quality and also great for phone calls. I've used it for many different phone calls. So you won't lose track of what's happening around you. It will keep you safe while also allowing you to stay in the moment. And it's made for people like you and I. So you, as a friend of mine, can get 20% off by using code TINA at oladance.com. That's OLADANCE.com. Or you can go to oladance.com/TINA. That's OLADANCE.com/TINA to save 20% off your Ola Dance wearable stereo. Check them out. And that's something that is so needed throughout every element of our world. But I think it's something that within the running world, we often don't think about. But to me, it comes across a lot when I think about races and where races travel and what race directors, race organizers give to those communities where the races go through. Like, what are you giving back in order to trample across their streets and maybe leave some waste behind, or just close down roads for the morning, or how does that impact those communities? And for so long, it's just been a case of like, well, this is the city, so we can do whatever we want with the city, but yet the start and finish area is in a very different location to wherever this race travels. And we see it a lot in the running community. Are there some other examples that you can think of that, people listening here might not have considered in terms of communities not being considered with decisions made in regards to running?
The race event examples you just gave is a really good point. And before I joined the RIDC, I was actually consulting with a few local races. Mm-hmm. And these are the types of conversations we were having. And they were actually new conversations for them. What are we missing? What are we not considering? Yes, we can talk about price point. We recognize that that is a barrier for some groups. And then the traveling to the start line, what happens at the end of a race? What is that experience like? If I go to a open field with there's beer, there's a massage table, there's all these businesses, but who owns these businesses and who are providing these experiences and getting paid to have those opportunities to be there? The volunteers, what's the makeup of the volunteers? Who do I see along the course? I'll never forget my first marathon, first and only so far. And in 2016, I ran the New Jersey Marathon, and at mile 20, it was a torrential downpour. And at mile 20, I fell, and not that many runners were around. And I looked around and I just felt so alone. And then this older Black woman volunteer, I heard, "Are you okay, baby?" And it just was, for some reason, exactly what I needed. I was able to get up and limp a bit and then finish my marathon. And so it's all of those moments that mattered. Who's the announcer at these races? It's the same person for the last 30 years. It's like, they're probably great, but let's give an opportunity for some more voices. Do we do a land acknowledgement, right? I'm in the city of Philadelphia, but it's also known as the Lenape lands. What does that mean to do a land acknowledgement? And then again, all those other moments, the volunteers, the contractors who are paid, and then that end experience. I'm so excited I finished, and who's around me? What's around me? So I love that you brought that up. And I think these are examples of when we say representation matters, inclusion matters, hiring, for opportunities like being a contractor or supplier, they matter. Because when someone goes to say, I'm going to go sign up for a race, they're thinking about all of these things. And if you are someone who don't think about these things, what a privilege. Yes. Because there are countless of people who have to think about these things.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And so in that moment, what year was that, by the way, that realization for you?
The realization happened around 2016, 2017. It was like I was already doing it. And then when I had to write up something, that's when the words, they actually came to me. And I said, oh, this is what you've been doing. You've been figuring out how to get resources and power to the communities who need it most. Right? So for the most part, I was always in the community doing the work and hoping that resources would come. If we do that, we're just going to be hoping forever. So I needed to, all right, let me go into the system. Let me go into these rooms, build these relationships, learn about what opportunities and resources exist, and then figure out a way to redistribute them to the communities.
Was that intimidating to, the first few times you got into those rooms with, I would imagine a lot of the time it's kind of as they say, like old boys network, I think is the term, but, where it's people who have known each other for 30 years and they've been in, as you said, in the same roles, kind of this race announcers, the same thing, in the same roles. Tell us about that moment of going into those rooms and speaking up on behalf of the community.
Absolutely. It is nerve-wracking. There's a bit of fear. There's a bit of, what if I lose my job? What if which is a safety net for me, right?
Yeah.
Then you're talking about quality of life in my family. And so it's all these risks that come to mind and all these risks that came to mind. But in those moments, I reminded myself that this is not just about me. This is bigger than me. And every time I did that, I got the courage. Every time I did that, I pulled on the strength from the communities. I pulled on my upbringing and my experiences there. I pulled on the strength that I got from my grandma and from my mom. And then that gave me the courage. And so I could be in this corporate room with 12 people and be an entry-level role and say, hey, this is not right. And here's why. And here's what was said about that. And we really need to rethink this. And knowing that that's a lot of risk going into that. But again, I always thought this is beyond me. I have to think about not just the communities I was serving now, but even the future generations.
Yeah, and absolutely critical.
Yeah. And that's now how I look back. In that moment, it was just a fear of I might lose my job, right?
Yeah.
And a fear of, but if I don't say something, then our communities won't get the research. They won't get these things. And over time that evolved to, we need to make it better for the people who are here now, but especially better for the next generation.
Yes.
And so that ego gets out the way, fear gets out the way, because it is not about me at that point.
As City Fit Girls that you co-founded in 2012, had that given you some practice in, speaking to a group, kind of giving you some confidence to be assertive and to really believe in the impact that could happen at the community level? Had that been building for you at that time?
The role of co-leading City Fit Girls helped me learn how to be myself in whatever room I'm in. So that run club and that experience really helped me unlearn a lot of things that I was conditioned with, right? And so the examples I was sharing previously happened after the launch of City Fit Girls.
Yeah.
And so at the time City Fit Girls launched, I was on a health and fitness journey and going around the city, going into boutique fitness studios, into different clubs, and feeling like I was the only one, whether it was my race, whether it was my body size, whether it was my pace. And I said, this is ridiculous. And I said to Kiera, my co-founder of City Fit Girls, now known as Strides, I said, let's create our own thing. And we want to make it so that it's accessible to all women, regardless of their race, pace, shape, socioeconomic status, or assigned gender at birth. And we started out with boot camps. I was a certified personal trainer at the time. And so we hosted boot camps. It was called Club Cardio. So we mixed in dancing and anything we wanted to do. And to offer the things that were important to us, that felt good to us, and then to see it be received in such a way where hundreds of women have participated in our programming over the past decade, that was a clear example for me. I have to show up as myself, and I have to accept whatever consequences come of that, but those aren't my consequences to deal with because I was my authentic self. So that's what that experience of building City Fit Girls, that's what it did for me. And then 4 years later, Takia said, we had actually did our first, in 2013, we did our first half marathon. And a couple of years later, Takia said, I'm going to launch a run club. Mm-hmm. And I said, you go do that. That's your thing. The dancing and the strength training was my thing.
Oh, so you weren't really running much at that point?
I ran the half marathon, but it was not a part of my daily live, breathe, Mm-hmm. Growing up, running was for me something that you either ran because you were running away from something, or, you were running around with your friends. Mm-hmm. I didn't look at it as a sport, an industry where you could potentially work and make a living, or where you can run races and finish races and feel a sense of accomplishment. I didn't have a concept of that where I grew up. And so when I first was introduced to the sport, I did a walk run 5K. Mm-hmm. And I said, wow. So even with asthma, and I grew up always in the hospital with asthma, even with asthma, I could do this walk run. I wonder what else I could do. And so then I did a longer distance. And then when we were like, let's do the half marathon, I was like, that's ridiculous. It probably stops there for me. That's insane. And then we did it. And I was like, oh. So with asthma and with this perception that I grew up with, these are no longer my truths as barriers. See, like these were no longer barriers because I was able to see that I was able to participate and actually finish a race. And then it grew from there. It was like, okay, well, now we have a run club. So now I'm motivated. And now even more women are joining. We got up to 80 women every week joining us for a 3-mile run. Mm-hmm. And so it became about community. It became about personal best. It became about pushing each other. And then that's when I was like, I think I can do a marathon. Where did that come from? But it came from what we did with City Fit Girls.
Yes. Thank you for sharing that. That's really just so inspiring to hear. And curious, what was the reason for changing it to Strides, just to encompass more of what you felt like it had grown beyond City Fit Girls?
After the pandemic and we sat for 2 years, we had a lot of conversations about who do we want to be post-pandemic. And when we started City Fit Girls, we were early 20s. We were at a different place in time, and the world evolved. It was evolving. And for us, we said, well, we want to make sure that our community is inclusive regardless of your assigned gender at birth, right? We said that, but our name didn't really align with that. And we were okay with guys joining. So it was this, look, everybody can join. Mm-hmm. And after the pandemic, it was like, everybody needs this, right? So that's kind of how it evolved. We believed that we could adjust our name to make our community even more inclusive. But the work we did over the 10 years didn't get lost. Like the work we did was still very much embedded in everything we did. So when we relaunched and we had our group runs and everyone, regardless of gender identification, showed up, the City Fit Girls spirit was still there, the mission, the intention. And so it felt like we didn't skip a beat, actually, but we invited more people to join us.
Thank you to Allbirds for sponsoring this episode of the Running for Real podcast. And I had the absolute pleasure and gift of going into the Allbirds Design HQ this week. So I got to see some of the shoes coming out in 2023, 2024, and beyond. Let me just tell you, there are some updates in shoes that I can barely wait for. And I'm not a particular shoe dog, but this is incredible what they are working on here. It's something that's making my heart beyond happy. And you are going to be so surprised with what they have coming. Can't say more, but it's very exciting. I am very excited to be working with Allbirds yet again this year, and we have some very fun ideas planned beyond hosting events and me just absolutely loving their shoes. They're so thoughtful and intentional with all that they do, and as it's the core of who they are, everything is looked through a sustainability lens. It's just built into their DNA, and that means so much to me. They just want other brands to care too. There's no ego involved. They genuinely believe that the world we can create together is the world that they want to be a part of. So yes, their shoes are amazing. They're everything. I am wearing them all day, every day. I wear the Dasher for most of my day, for any time I am traveling. And if I had to bring one pair of shoes with me on a trip, just one, that would definitely be the pair I would take. I wear the high top runners for my day-to-day use. I wear the flyers for my runs, the wall loungers for my evenings out. I wear the plant pacers to go with anything. And my kids are obsessed with their small beds. Steve wears them too. So yeah, my family is a big fan of Allbirds. Go give them a try. And if that's a bit overwhelming for you and you haven't tried Allbirds, start with the Dashers. That's my recommendation. Go to allbirds.com to go find out more and go check out my many, 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 many favorites. I love that. And that's such a good example of being willing and vulnerable enough to change, right? Because you could have easily been like, no, this is what this is supposed to be. This was our mission. This is what we said. But I think I found this with myself and my business and just other areas of my life, but we all have this of where you feel maybe it's an identity, maybe it's just a piece of you where you feel like that's always been who you are. And it can be scary to say, like either my heart isn't there anymore, or like I feel like I want to include this as a part of things. And so I love that you did that and took that step. And the pandemic kind of gave you the opportunity to do it nice and smoothly. But it's so good to see you walking that walk in terms of saying we are evolving and it's okay to evolve and it's okay to change and to say like, okay, the word City Fit Girls doesn't quite include everyone in the way that we feel we want to live by. So here's what we're going to do. Yeah.
Yeah. And I would add, it wasn't smooth. It was questioning, it was a lot of questioning ourselves and our decisions. It was, we came up with this name and made it something that a lot of people knew about and knew the name, right? It was like a branding thing. We had launched in a few cities at some point throughout our 10 years. And so it was, how do we make sure we don't lose, right? It was all those types of questions. And we had to say to ourselves, the 80 women that are showing up every Wednesday in Center City, a good amount of them are white. Now, if we want to make sure that we are inclusive and reaching as many people as possible, we need to move around to different neighborhoods. Right? So it was a reckoning, if you would. Like it was, okay, let's look at ourselves and what we're doing and where this country, what has changed and where it's going, and how do we make sure that we are continuing to evolve just as the world is evolving. And that included, we need to go to different neighborhoods to meet people where they are. We need to share about our runs on more than just, our usual platforms and communication tools. We need to make sure our language is clear and consistent and that everyone understands that we've changed our name, but our ethos are still there. So it wasn't smooth, but the pandemic forced us to get really clear. Are we really serving our mission? Are we really doing what we say we want to do in communities? And hey, it's okay if that answer has evolved. Here's your opportunity to revisit that.
Thank you for showing that vulnerability of seeing that, because that is the reality of the situation. That's the realness, right? And it's the same as when, I think clubs in New York have had to come to terms with that, right? That's just because Central Park is this big park doesn't mean that's where every club should meet, because that's not accessible for a lot of people in the city. So I love to hear that. Although when you said Center City, my heart just like skipped a beat. I don't know if you know this, but I lived in Philly when I was in 2012 to 2014, and I loved it. Like I still feel like a piece of my heart is there. And I hadn't heard the word Center City in so long. And I just, like when you said that, I was like, like it all just like came to life.
Came flooding, yeah.
Oh, that's, I lived in Mount Airy.
Yep, I live in Germantown.
Oh, okay, yeah. Oh, yeah. We've narrowed your pool there. Yeah, very close then. And I the reason I was there was I was getting my master's at LaSalle, so even closer. Yeah, me too. So yeah, when you said that, I just was like, oh, my heart, like I still miss it. Okay, so talk about everything we've talked about so far has really shown that ability to keep evolving, keep changing, keep honing what you want to be and what you set out to be, and making those changes in your life and wherever you have your kind of whatever pots we all have our fingers in, if that's the right term. What would you say to someone listening who maybe feels some element of, I sense something doesn't feel aligned to me, something feels off in my life or what I'm doing in a group or a community I'm in or whatever it might be, but that feels like such a terrifying thing because of maybe people above me in power, or maybe that's just the way it's always been. That's something I, in my life, am seeing a lot of. The way it's always been holds so many things back because we just kind of accept it for what it is. What would you say to someone who's feeling that gut feeling, but it just seems too overwhelming to try?
Those feelings are valid. Something that has helped me navigate those types of feelings is I started surrounding myself with people who think differently than me, have different lived experiences than me, and could teach me, or I can just like learn from them and what they do and how they move. I will say the last couple of years, I've surrounded myself with activists. And by surrounding myself with the activists, the people who are willing to disrupt the norm, the status quo, the people who are willing to say, so what? We've been doing this for 30 years. And again, it has not helped everyone. And again, it has actually harmed folks. And here's why. And believe them, right? And so, one, in terms of, you don't have to do this alone. And so those feelings are valid. You don't have to go at this alone, but do take that step to educate yourself, to unlearn, to go to different neighborhoods, to different events. And it's not, hey, I'm just here to learn, but like, I'm here to really get to know you and get to know your culture and get to know, who my neighbors are, who my consumers are, who my current or future employees are, right? Because sometimes we look at it in silos. But when we say, I just don't know where to start, or I don't want to do anything, or I don't want to say the wrong thing, we limit the opportunity to make real connections with our short lifetime. That's one. And I'm a meditation and yoga teacher, so I always bring things back to that. But then two, when you are talking about you are offering products and service to everyone, that includes everyone of a different race and ethnicity, everyone of a different pace, everyone of a different experience and approach to running. And so if you have only been used to one way, you have an opportunity every day to do something different, to learn something different, and to let go of that conditioning. It's like, hey, it might not be your fault, but it is your responsibility to do something different.
have you found when you've gone out into communities, maybe a community that you haven't connected with before? I just want to talk about the element of, if we want to break it down to simplistics, of making new friends, finding new people in various communities with different backgrounds and experiences and cultures and whatever else. I find that quite easy to kind of essentially find people, seek them out, and really have a curious desire and want to get to know them. But I have heard from so many people that is so intimidating to go somewhere new, even if you're standing near someone and you think, oh, maybe I want to talk to them, to just take that first step or to find a way to actually talk to people in communities. Do you have any advice there for someone who that is like the ultimate scary thing of putting yourself out there and talking to someone or in a community you've never known before?
Yeah, we have to be mindful of the stories we tell ourselves. We have to be mindful of the stories we hold on to and how much power we give it. We have all figured out how to make friends. We have all figured out how to navigate a different culture if we've had the privilege to travel to a different city, state, or country.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you find that, but it's much harder with the Black community or much harder with Indigenous community or much harder with LGBTQ, why is that? Right? Get really curious about why that is. And I mean deep curiosity. Is this white supremacy? Or, in terms of dominant culture and like the systems and conditioning that has been placed upon us? Because at the root of it, we've made friends before. Mm-hmm. We've again, tried a different food from a different culture. Heard someone speak a different language and maybe got curious about it and maybe wanted to see how we can navigate going to a place with a different language and actually do the work of learning. And so is it only when it's comfortable and convenient for you that it's okay? But when it's not, then it's all of these things start flooding, all these stories start coming. And I would just, again, get really curious about the stories you tell yourself. It may not be as hard or as complicated as we make it out to be. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Not saying that those feelings aren't valid, because they are. And we know that BIPOC people have to navigate this every time, every day, mm-hmm. In white spaces. Mm-hmm. So that's what I would offer. It's interesting, this conversation, because I think sometimes we look for what's the one answer, what's the one solution. Mm-hmm. Like, get out of your own way.
Yeah.
And stop making it just about you.
So true.
And if you have a negative experience, when you finally took that leap, you had a negative experience, that doesn't mean that you stop there. How many times have we done something and it was super hard and we failed at it and we did it again? Mm-hmm. And so why is it that when getting to know and navigating, let's say spaces that are different in terms of race, ethnicity, and things like that, it's so much harder. It's so many more, loops and hoops. Then we look at the system in which we're operating in. And so again, it's not about you, but you have that responsibility to do that unlearning and to feel the fear and do it anyway, because so many of us do that every single day without the luxury of having the option.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for explaining that, because that is such an important point to mention. And yeah, again, is a good example of where privilege has prevented, many of those situations in day-to-day life. So that's why it does feel so big and drastic, because the rest is, it's kind of like for people who have not run before, when they go into running, like if you're not someone who's ever been a runner and you go into running, you're like, what is this? What would anyone ever want to do this thing? But when you are there day to day doing it and you know that discomfort of running intimately, it doesn't seem so big.
Right. So the story's quiet.
Yes.
Right. The fear kind of quiets. You feel all of that and you hear all of that and you do it anyway. And then you learn from it. And then you make some adjustments and some tweaks. And then you get some support and some help. And then you try again.
Yep. Thank you.
Yeah.
Your mindfulness is obviously coming loud and clear through what you were just sharing there. Tell us about the role that plays in your life. You're a mindfulness teacher. It's clearly a big part of you. And from what I read, you start your day at 5 to meditate, move your body, journal, and read, which to me just sounds like a different world. And I want to say a dream of getting back there when my kids aren't so young. But tell us, how does that come into your life?
Yeah. So right now, that for me is self-preservation, that entire run through. And that is where I'm at in my life, right? On my journey. It's self-preservation. So then I can go about the day. And I've always been interested in, I think since I was younger, I just was always interested in the stories we tell ourselves, the thoughts we tell ourselves, and how they overpower us and how we give it so much power. So where does that come from?
How did that show up as when you were a kid?
When I was a kid, it would come up from seeing family members navigate stress, and their reaction to it would seem more extreme than maybe the last time they navigated something, or maybe than I would have navigated it. So, we all maybe are navigating this thing, but we all approach it and react to it very differently. So I was young, so I didn't have that much, I don't have what I have now, but I was curious about how stress really impacted the body, the mind, the decisions we made, how we treated each other. And also the systems in which we had to operate in, right? Like whether you grew up in a low income community or you grew up in a family, a household that focused on perfectionism. And so you felt like you had to keep that up. And if it didn't, then you would react in a way. And personally, I would see how I would react with certain situations and say, well, where did that come from? It almost feels like you're not in control. And so over time, I got curious about it. I got curious about what does it mean to sit with emotions, to sit with thoughts, to not react to them right away, no matter the strong emotion that's building up. Then I got into a yoga practice, started meditating. I did that personally. And so then my friends and family, they would kind of look at me like, okay, okay, Kiera's being the big person here. And it was like, no, I just don't have to react in those ways that I used to react. And then the pandemic happened, and I was already thinking about, let's say, youth and mental health, Black people and mental health, and the resources available and the cost of these resources. I was already thinking about what I could do. And then the pandemic happened, and it was we all need help. Like we all need help. And so I became a certified yoga teacher during that time. And I said, I'm going to learn this practice that has helped me so much. I'm going to learn it, and then I'm going to teach it to whoever needs it. And so during the pandemic, in addition to the yoga teacher training, I was hosting on Instagram, I was hosting a meditation every day, 5 days a week, 30, 45-minute meditation.
Oh, that's
we
beautiful.
covered topics of processing trauma. We covered, what to tell yourself when you're going through something, boundaries, all these different topics. And people were showing up. Hundreds of people were showing up.
Wow.
It's like, okay, this is what I'm here to do. Right? I think about, okay, this is what I'm here to do at this time. And so that's how my meditation and yoga practice deepened and went beyond what it's doing for me and my close network to what it can do for so many others.
Yes. Thank you for sharing that. And I can only imagine how impactful that was, and the fact that you were doing it there. You said you were doing it on Instagram?
Mm-hmm. They're all still available too on my Instagram page.
Okay, well, we'll
Under the
definitely
Reels
put a link.
section. And every couple of months, I remind people there's some meditations here.
Such a nice thing to do. And that is maybe leads into the final thing I want to touch on, which was, you believe so deeply in paying it forward. And a true steward of success is paying it forward, which is beautifully said. Tell us more about that. Why that's so important to you.
It's important. And I'm looking back on like the last 10, 15 years. It's important to pay it forward because we all have gifts to share. We all have gifts to share. And when we allow ourselves to share those gifts, so much can happen for an individual, for a family, for a neighborhood, a community, a city. And so I'm always again thinking about, what do my actions mean? What do my actions mean, not just for me, but for my family, for my future family, for the people that they'll interact with, for the communities they'll interact with? So it becomes bigger. Again, it becomes bigger than me. I think about when I first started at the RIDC, Allison Mariella Desir was a co-chair. She has the book Running While Black. And it was important for her to introduce me to different people so that I can get to know who's already been here doing this work, that I can, lean on for mentorship support and just learn from them. And one of the people she introduced me to is Teresa Baker. Mm-hmm. And I'll never forget my conversation with Teresa Baker because she made it a point to talk about there's so much we can learn from nature and the outdoors. Mm-hmm. And there's so much we can learn from people who were here before us, whether they're still living or not. And so I've always been thinking about the people who are coming after. And then she reminded me to think about the people who are still here. So when I think about that pay it forward, it's that continuous cycle.
Love that. That's beautiful.
What we're doing for who's here and then for who's coming.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I followed Teresa. I have for many years, and I love anything she puts out. Just the thought she had. So that's. I mean, I hope someday to interview her, but that is just such a good example there, and such an important thing to think about. Where can people go find you if they want to follow along with what you're doing at RIDC yourself, as in you mentioned those meditations, or anywhere else you want people to be able to go find you?
Yeah, to find me, the Running Industry Diversity Coalition, the website is runningdiversity.com. The social media, you can type in the full organization's name. The Instagram is running diversity. We also have a monthly newsletter that we send out with resources, things to consider, helping with the unlearning and the letting go of the conditioning. We have resources like 25 podcasts hosted by BIPOC runners. Mm-hmm. Where else can you go to get all that information in one place? So that's where people can find me and those resources. And then outside of me, I would encourage, especially anyone white listening, to really look up some really great authors and institutions who are doing this work and who have tons of resources so that we all move past the I'm just listening and learning to I am doing, I'm undoing. So I think about Race Forward is an incredible organization with tons of resources. I already mentioned Allison, her book, Running While Black. I mean, even the first couple of pages, you have a timeline. Here's the timeline of running in this country and the timeline of Black people and their experiences in this country. And just even that alone is just something
pretty
critical
eye-opening
to know. So there's tons of resources. And so let's all move from listening to learning to action and continued action.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I appreciate all that you are doing. Your big heart, as I said, I could feel that the day I met you in Austin, but also just so much more sharing now. So thankful for you and look forward to seeing what the future holds. So thanks for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
The Running for Real podcast and everything we do here at Running for Real would not be possible if it wasn't for the Running for Real team. While I am the person who you hear from most often and maybe the face of the brand, the rest of our team are such critical pieces of what we do. And without them, I think I'd just be running around in circles with ideas. So I want to take a moment to thank our team. To Jeremy Nessel, who's been with me since the very beginning. Kat McKay, Sally Pontarelli, Kelsey Wang, Sandy Gutierrez, Louise Murphy, Andrew Basola, Alexandria Will, and Maria Vargas. Thank you to each and every one of you for all that you give to Running for Real and our community. I appreciate you, and I'm so thankful for having you as a part of the team. So thankful to you, Kiera, for joining us today, and I hope you liked that new format. I would actually love your opinion on something, and I will be asking you over the coming weeks. I want to have a question to ask the guests that is fun, lighthearted, and a bit silly, but it's something a bit different. You know, what's your most embarrassing moment? Everyone's done that. What is something that makes you smile? Everyone's doing that. Like, what about something unique? So I would love your suggestions if you have them. But today I feel like Kiera had such a great one to start with, learning about her grandmother. And I really enjoyed that conversation. So thank you so much for listening. And I encourage you to spend some time over the coming month to really think about you and your life and how you can put what Kiera talked about today into action. So that is going out into other communities. That is considering but what role you can play in Black History Month and beyond, especially beyond, in terms of just how you can support that BIPOC community especially in the running space. I also want to encourage you to go follow Running in RIDC, and just easier for me to say the shorthand there, to go follow them, to go follow Kiera, to go check in with what she is up to from time to time. And if you are in Philadelphia, by all means, go check out Strides. I also want to thank our sponsors today. You can get links to our sponsors as well as all those links I just mentioned by going to runningforreal.com/episode 335. And I want to thank our sponsors who are Orlo. Orlo Nutrition is our brand new sponsor. You can go get those omega-3s and ultra spirulina from the world's most sustainable grower by going to Orlo Nutrition. That's ORLO nutrition.com and use the code TINA10 for an extra 10% off. If you go get it right now, you will actually get 37% off. So go check that link out in the show notes to go use that code TINA10 at orlonutrition.com. I also want to take a moment to thank Ola Dance. You can go get those wireless earbuds that do not sit in your ear. They sit outside of your ear. They have crystal clear quality and they don't use that kind of shaky bone conduction, which I absolutely love, because I always used to get a headache when I would use that. And you can go to oladance.com, OLADANCE.com, and use code TINA for 20% off your order. And thirdly, I also want to thank Allbirds for sponsoring this episode. You can go to allbirds.com and use code, or actually it's probably easier for you to just go to the link in the show notes to go check out the Allbirds one. You will get a free pair of socks by using my link. And all of those links will be in the show notes at runningforreal.com/episode 335. Thank you so much for listening. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel with that Red S course coming soon. And I'll see you on Monday for a Together Run.